Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are here certainly need no introduction to Predator and what we're honoring here in this panel, but I'm going to turn this over to the son of Stan Winston, Mr. Matt Winston.
Thank you. Thank you. Woo! So, 25 years, it's crazy. This is a pretty momentous moment, the first reunion of you guys in 25 years, all of you in one spot, right?
We're old.
That's true.
That's absolutely the truth. I have not.
And this is obviously a character that has captured people. I mean, you guys didn't have any clue, I'm sure, at the time. I know Dad didn't have any clue, but you guys always strive to knock it out of the park with every character that came out of Stan Winston Studio, and Predator became just massive. With the Stan Winston School Facebook page, we're talking to hundreds of thousands of people. Predator, you take a poll, who's your favorite monster? And Predator by so much, it's crazy. And we'll talk a little bit about the popularity of the character and sort of your experiences on the set and everything else. Before we get started, I want to introduce everyone, and then we're going to show a little home movie that Shannon and I put together this week.
From old videos.
Yes.
So please, I mean, there was an old VHS tape, so
Yes.
it's pretty
Kind
degraded.
of grainy and yucky. Dave Kinlan, to my left here, was part of the mechanical crew on the original Predator. Mechanized the shoulder cannon, yes. And to his left, Stan Winston lifer, like one of my second brothers, Richard Landon. Who did the animatronics for that memorable face. That was Richard. Shannon Shea, another brother.
Yes, brothers.
Who has supervised for Stan Winston Studio, Rick Baker's Cinovation, and K&B for a long time, and he gets around, that one. And to his left, artist extraordinaire Matt Rose. A great sculptor, worked for Dad on that and a couple other things, and then jumped over to Rick's shop for a long time and is still working with Rick. And then to his left, Steve Wang. Steve Wang. Who's an awesome artist and,
He's done a couple of things.
done a few things I'm sure
one or
you're
two.
aware of. That's Steve Wang. So before we go any further, like I said, Shannon and I, we went through a bunch of photos and videos, and Richard sent us some photos, and Shannon added to the mix, and we made a little home movie. It's very low quality. It's me and him in my office in iMovie. So just take it in the spirit in which it is intended, which is a family reunion. And if you guys can play that video, thanks.
Store-bought camouflage shirt, used, as you can see. Nice, inexpensive, and a dangerous modeling.
This, as you can see, is the way real camouflage works.
How is that happening?
Well, it's basically from the moisture in your body.
No, the bottom of the face mask is feels like, ow.
I'm putting it on him. Matt, you want to bring the head out and just show him what his face looks like under there without putting the head?
Hi, Mom.
Very well done.
We were children. We were just kids.
And most of us hadn't seen that video before, so this is
Nice job.
I mean, ever. So this is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more which I will share with you guys at a later date.
So let's jump right in. I mean, we don't have much time, so I want to give you guys as much time to share your experience and you guys to ask some questions, and we have a little presentation at the end as well. So we have a lot to get done. Why don't we start at the end? Steve, let's just talk about your experiences, your memories of being on that show, what it highlights, lowlights.
Well, when we first did Predator, it was an 8-week project, and it was crazy. It was like, I think the first 4 weeks was me, Matt Rose, and Shannon Shea, and it was insane. And I remember sleeping every 3 days it was sleep. Yeah, and I remember Matt would be so freaked out because Matt is like, he's a perfectionist even more than I am, and he was doing the head and he was just like going in like, oh, this is gonna I need more time, it's gonna be crazy, and he was getting all kind of crazy about it, and then and at some point I got to the point where I was thought, oh man, there's no way we can do this project. It's impossible with the crew that we have. So I was gonna go tell Stan, like, Stan, I'm losing my mind, I'm whatever, and then I go to Stan, and Stan goes, hey, before you tell me anything, keep your eye on Matt. I'm a little worried about him. And I was like,
It's true. It's true.
damn. All right, so then I had to, right? Then Shannon, right?
Oh yeah. I will
But
tell you.
I knew.
I mean, and I don't want to jump it, but I will say that one of the reasons why it was just us three is because the studio was still finishing Monster Squad. You guys were still on set.
We're still on set, yes.
Right. So we actually came back. As you know, Matt and Steve did the Gill Man for Monster Squad, and I think that they had wrapped. You guys had wrapped that, right? You were wrapped, and back in the shop,
Yeah,
right?
we just finished that. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, and so but again, it's one of those things where literally we had like a day to do this, 2 days to do that, and it was just insanity. The whole thing just went, as a blur. And I remember hallucinating for the first time. I was driving home. I was wondering what happens when you hallucinate. And it was like 3 a.m. and I'm driving home and I see like, oh, hey, why is there a family sitting there waiting for the bus at 3 a.m.? So I'm looking at them, and just like a computer graphic, as I get closer, they morph into a garbage can and a sign. And I'm like, oh wow, that's like crazy. So most of my experiences was just not sleeping
No.
and almost breaking Matt Rose's toe.
You did.
I did break it. Oh yeah. There was the infamous picture. We were goofing around. And it's the painting stud picture of me painting one of the heads, and I'm holding this jury-rigged weight with an airbrush. And Matt took the picture, and the thing was unbalanced. There was nothing holding the weight. So
There was a nail. going this way.
so
And it
after it
went
was
like
done,
that.
yeah, after it was done, Matt walked by, and I literally shifted slightly, and the weight dropped down and broke his toe.
It's a good thing at the very beginning of a project is your toe getting broken.
Yeah. It's a good thing we're good friends. He never held it.
It's good. But again, he's like Steve was saying, we didn't sleep at all. We slept in a Barca lounger, like in the shop somewhere, and he'd paint, and then he'd sleep, and then I'd paint, and then I'd sleep, something like that. That's all.
Yeah, it was
before the jungle, before all that. Plus,
Yeah, and then finally I went to Stan and said, Stan, we're never gonna get this done. We need more people. And then the second month we had a full shop of people, and everything came together. And last minute, and we got done. And Matt and I we're only 21 years old on that show. It was like we've been in the business for a year, and so we're very fortunate to have gotten the opportunity.
You guys are younger than my daughter. You guys were younger than my daughter is now doing that. And I don't mean to jump in, but I will also say that I recall, Steve, that you were saying to Stan, "Oh my God, I don't have enough time to finish the body sculpture," and Stan saying, "It's all about the paint job. It's all about the paint job, Steve. Don't worry about it. I know you're going to put a kick-ass paint job on this, and that will solve everything." And you did, so.
Yeah, Stan was very kind to me because on Monster Squad, before I painted the Gillman, or designed the Gillman paint job, there was a contest for the industry professionals, the Scream Mad George contest, and I had shown Stan a kind of a really rough pencil sketch of the coloration I wanted to do, and Stan was like, "Yeah, sure," because he didn't quite get it because I did a horrible job presenting it. Then I did the contest, and I won first place in the costume category, and Stan was one of the judges, so he saw the paint job that I was doing. He's like, "Are you gonna paint the Gillman like this style?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, great." So we did. We actually painted in that one weekend we were working. He actually brought his wife over, and that's very rare because for Stan to be so excited to come on a weekend to look at the work in progress.
She's in the audience, Karen Winston. Raise your hand.
Oh, hi, Karen.
And you're like, you're bringing me to the shop on a Saturday?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and then so afterwards, when I designed the head paint scheme to show Stan, I said, "Stan, this is kind of what I want to do." And Stan was so kind to me. He just said, he looked at it just like last time. He went, "Yeah," and then he just said, he says, "You know what? You've already impressed me with everything you've done." And he says, "Whatever you do is going to be above and beyond anything I can expect." And that really just was so.
And it really pissed off a lot of the other artists in the shop, which I love.
I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with that.
So Matt, I got to give you a chance now. My first memory of you is on Aliens. You banging out alien tails. You remember that?
Just the one tail.
It was one tail. I remember coming in, and you were this kid, and just the speed. You blocked out this tail. Everyone is just getting started warming up their clay, and your tail was done.
It was fear of being fired.
Well,
honestly.
Well, let's talk about your experience on Predator and being given the assignment to sculpt the full-size head and just your work and your experience beyond the broken toe.
It was wonderful, actually. It was wonderful because working with Kevin again, worked with him previously on Harriet and Anderson's, and he was an incredible man. And the fact that he was going to be this character who was in a different incarnation, years before as the Hunter, that Steve had also worked on, and then it went to Rick's for a very short time. I mean, a day, and then it was gone. And then we got to work together on Monster Squad all together, and then it came back, and then it was called Predator, and it was like, wow, okay, cool. And it's like, got to get it done as quick as possible. That's all I remember.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
we were all
destined.
jamming.
I think we're destined to work on that project because they followed us around like 3 different places.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. And then we all just jammed like crazy.
Was there a point during the filming where you could relax a little and just sort of take in and judge, okay, we're part of something special here, or was it just a job that is a blur for you?
There was no moment of peace. None. Except the fireworks and stuff like that. It's a different story in Mexico. So.
Yeah, there was some squirreling around.
Oh, well, let's hear about the swirling around. Come on.
Well, I mean, I was just saying.
You'll have to tell the frogs.
No, I was going to say that. I remember we got a squib remember we got the squib from Chovy, the Mexican physical effects guy, and we were convinced it was going to explode. We were like, oh, God, it's like kids with a firecracker, remember? And we got that fake head, and you guys rigged it full of blood bags, remember? And we stuck this squib in there, and I think you rigged it all up to a battery, and we're all gathered around it with a video camera going, okay, watch, the head's going to explode like scanners. We were so excited, and it just went, and the sparks came out of it. And you ran up and grabbed the blood bag and just squished it with your hands and came running at us with your bloody hands. It was like, that's what I remember.
Matt likes blood a lot,
Not really.
especially when it explodes.
No, but you got to tell the frog story. That's at least we got to tell that.
Well, hold on one second. Can you hold my mic?
I brought my old call sheets. Wow. I actually have my
Predator call sheets, the
Predator call
originals.
sheets, yes. And I know, can you believe it? Oh, and I brought something else too. I brought this.
Hold on. This is thank you. When we talked to production, actually, when I talked to production and I said, okay, where are we going? And they said, we're going to Palenque in Mexico. The first leg of the trip, they had shot at Puerto Vallarta. And everyone on the crew was going, oh, it was great. It was a port town. You know, every weekend a cruise ship would come in and everyone would be drunk and laughing. And then, you know, we got dropped into the jungle, and it was the jungle. So they told us, okay, you know, you guys should all be wearing camouflage, which is why you see us in pictures wearing camouflage. And so I remember we went to the Army Navy store. Remember, we all bought camo gear and boots and stuff, like a bunch of nitwits. And I bought this scarf. This thing. I don't even know why I felt I needed it. Maybe I was going to hide, you know, you guys wouldn't be able to see me. But Kevin ended up wearing this. Like, between every take, he would put this around his head. And I know it sounds gross. I've never washed it. So Kevin's DNA is here with us
Cloning
today.
Kevin Peter Hall.
Kevin Peter
Operation
Hall is,
Clone.
He is
Kevin
with us
Peter
today.
Hall.
Kevin,
We miss you. We love you.
Before we get to the frog story, because it's a great story, but I'd love for Richard and Dave to get a chance because the artists are, you know, jibber jabbering. What about the mechanics? Richard, let's talk about your experience being thrown such a mighty task as a very young man to mechanize the Predator's face.
Thrown is the exact right word. We were finishing on Monster Squad, as the guy said, and Stan showed us a picture. We were shooting the telephone booth transformation of the werewolf, and we shot it, and it went as well as it went. And when it was all over, Stan said, everyone come here for a second, I want to show you something. He pulled out his notepad, and he showed us, this is a picture of the Predator. This is the next thing you guys are going to be working on. And on Monster Squad, it was a real level playing field in the mechanical department. Dave ran his own characters. I ran my effects. Dave Nelson was with us. He ran his effects. There really was no head of department or anything. Everyone answered directly to Stan. And then Stan turned to me and said, and you're going to mechanize the face, Richard. And I went, I'm going to what? Because I had never done a radio-controlled mechanism before. I'd only done cable-control mechanisms. So I had to learn a whole new technology, and I stepped up and did. And it was an amazing thing. And coming back into the shop after Monster Squad, fortunately, it's sort of a step-appropriate necessity where the mechanic comes in later in the project. I need something to mechanize. So the sculpture already existed. I had seen Steve sculpting on the body, and I remember seeing like the black form of Kevin Peter Hall suddenly covered with enough clay to make it a naked Predator without armaments on. So he sculpted the body first of an actual Predator, and then he sculpted onto that the portions of the armor that were permanently attached, which I thought was a lot of extra work, but it set all of the form and all of the sculptural lines all the way throughout the body, which I think just made it, you know, all the better. And Matt was finishing the head, and like Steve said, losing his mind from lack of sleep. And the only real contributory story I have at that point was that the sculpture of the head was done. So we, from that, generated the negative of the mechanical core. It's like the fiberglass skull that I mechanize, and then that is what Matt's sculpture sits onto via the lab work steps to make sure it, you know, fits perfectly like puzzle pieces. And I had finished the whole mechanism. The tusks moved. He had little like constricting muscles in the corner of the eye, which you can't even see because it's black on black moving, but I put him in. And I had outer and inner brow tabs sliding through the actual fiberglass. And then we took a look at it, we put a test skin on it, and everyone said, okay, that looks pretty good. And I don't even remember who it was, but they said, well, you know, there's a way that was done on Harry that actually looks more organic, looks more natural. Was that Steve? Yeah, and that is the floating peanut, which is pretty much a standard technique. And everyone said, what you've got looks good, and Matt actually wanted it right then. He wanted to start the glue down that second because the clock was running, the clock was burning and on flames and screaming at the back of his neck. He wanted to glue that skin down right then. And everyone said, let's go ahead and try the floating peanut. How long will that take you to do? And I'm like, I've never done a floating peanut, I don't know. So I took another probably 1 day, and the part that I remember the most about creating the floating peanut was I had never done it. I believe Dave had done one before. Dave had finished he either finished the backpack or had gotten as far as he needed to, and he had a commitment in New York. So I called Dave in New York. We spent an hour on the phone.
What the hell's a floating peanut?
Basically, I just wanted his take on how he would handle one of the corners. I had one side worked perfectly, and the other side was sticking. It wasn't moving correctly. So we spent an hour on the phone with Dave describing how to drive a hole, how to drill a hole through the side of a screw so that I could push and pull that screw that was on the threaded portion of the floating peanut. And I don't know what Stan's
Catch
phone
that,
bill
kid?
was like.
The threaded portion of the floating screw on the floating peanut.
Exactly.
Did everybody get that?
Very technical terminology. I'm sorry to
There
have to
will be
go
a
so
test.
deep. And then the next day I brought it back and it was done and everyone agreed that was the right way to go with the Predator. And Matt then went, I'm gluing down the skin now.
That facial articulation is hugely important in that film. When that mask comes off, if that articulation hadn't worked, the whole thing would have fallen apart. And you did a beautiful job. And thank you for the floating peanut. help.
Richard, wait 1 second. Richard,
Yep.
talk about the spreading mandibles on the bottom.
Which portion of it?
Portion where Stan said, I want those mandibles to be spread. And you were like, And we had to add that big servo.
The last layer that was added to the mandibles was the tips. The tips moved great. There was a 3-jointed mandible, 1, 2, 3. So all the tips moved and they would swing out, but the bottom didn't spread. And the whole mechanism was done. Completed, and Stan said, I want that to move. And I'm like, I've got no room. There's a human being's face right there. I can't put a pulley inside his jawbone. So I had to do it with a linear pull, which is the worst mechanical advantage in the universe, pulling basically on center instead of pulling it open like a nice gate. And I had these huge, massive, they were called Seikyo 105s. It was 102, the black one. And that thing was so big, it actually lived in the hump of the back.
Yeah, I
right
remember
next
you
the
handed it to us
backpack.
and said, you got to find a place to put this. Remember that? And,
Where?
Fortunately,
where?
Fortunately, the foam of the suit was so thick in the back that it actually shrank, and it created this nice wide wedge-shaped opening that we were all panicking about. So I'm like, okay, well, that's where my servo goes. And everyone's like, there's a giant servo in this guy's back. And then I don't know who else it was, but someone else was then dressing him with all of the bones and armors and feathers and stuff. And
We had a ton of duct tape too, so.
and then someone took that string of vertebrae and just went, and it just dropped right in. I was like, okay, that was perfect. It completed the costume.
He just revealed what epic failures we were.
No, it's
Creative camera
Problem
angles
solvers,
hide
problem
everything.
solvers.
So Dave Kinlan, you're up, dude. Let's
Yes,
talk
sir.
about that iconic shoulder cannon that you mechanized, and maybe we can talk about a mishap that happened with that amazing
Little
shoulder
accident on
cannon.
set,
But
yeah.
let's start with your assignment on it, how that came to be, and any challenges or memories you have of that.
We were finishing up Monster Squad. We were all doing super crazy hours on that, and I remember Stan asking me like, "Okay, I need you to do the gun for this thing," and the thing that comes to mind most is just sleep deprivation. There was a string of shows that went one right into the other. It was like Amazing Stories, Monster Squad, Predator, and I remember all of us kind of. What was it, Baker Square or something on the corner? It was like
Baker
our,
Square, yeah.
it was like we'd have our second lunch there around 5 or 6 and then go back and work until midnight or something.
Yeah.
So did the original gun really, really quickly, probably in what, maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at the most. And I kept asking Stan during those 2 weeks, do you need any help on set? You need me to go to Mexico? And he's like, no, we're fine. Kept asking him. He said, no. I got a call to go back to New York to do Brain Damage with Frank Henenlotter. And I finally like, well, okay, I better take that. I took that. 2 days later, Stan needs to see you in his office right away. Okay, fine. Stan, what is it? I need you to go to Mexico. And I'm like, I can't. I'm so sorry. And he was like, all right. So built the shoulder gun with a couple of servos, really simply. I built 6 chambers into it for 6 different squibs, so you can get 6 shots off before you had to reset it. So I thought that would be convenient on set. And so I'm in New York on Brain Damage, and I get this call from Richard. And it's like, Richard, you're all staticky. What's going on? It's like, well, floating peanut. We're in Mexico. Where do we get the belt drive for the gun? Why are you asking me this? He's like, we've had a little accident. I was like, what happened? And apparently, he said, the effects guy had loaded all 6 chambers of the gun, and they were going to do a test with firing the gun so they could see what it looked like. Couldn't do it because of weather or time or something. Had to put it off to the next day. So something happened to the squibs in the gun. They all kind of Anyway, something bad happened. And when they went to fire one, all 6 went off, which just basically broke all the belts in the gun, sent it flying.
Yes, yes.
And that's the image I saw. I thought Kevin had died.
You know, I'm going to point to the gun because you can actually see it floating in the air. Hold on.
It was nothing but shrapnel.
There's the gun right there. You can see it going right there.
So you get a call from Richard saying, Dave, we blew up your gun.
We blew up your gun. Sorry about that. But because it had belts, it didn't get in. All the belts just broke, and it didn't get too badly injured. So that wasn't so bad.
Basic mechanical structure was completely intact. It stripped out the gear trains and the servos, and it shredded it was Redberg ladder chain.
Yep.
You
was
should have
Yep,
seen,
exactly.
Should have seen Kevin though. After it had happened, he stood there, and I ran up to him because I was the only guy who would take off the helmet.
Right.
And he was just standing there, and I'm like, it's not possible. He's dead. He's just been killed. And I ran up, I pulled the helmet off, and smoke just came out around his face. And this is all he said. What happened? That was it. I'm like, how are you alive? And that was the first day of shooting, I believe, Steve.
I think it was
Second?
No, it was the
It's
first.
one of the first times
It was
that we
one of
put
the
him
first
in,
times,
on
yeah.
film.
Because when we had to shoot this particular scene, it was magic hour. So, I mean, every day at magic hour, we would have to stop whatever we were doing, run down to the pond, and Brian Simpson, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, he's doing a job back east. Brian and the guys would jump in the water and put Kevin in the water. So we did it like every day for like a week, right?
I think I have a shot of that as well.
Coming out of the water sequence is a whole nother story, too.
Somewhere near the red suit. There's lots of great pictures. Dave, thank you all. I want to open it up to you guys. I'm sure you all have questions for these guys, and who knows, it might be another 25 years we have to wait. So let's go ahead. In the back, I saw you first. Yes, right with a hat. Yes. Hi, I'm Jamie Hall. I'm Peter Hall's nephew. Hey! Woohoo! All right. Say how much this means to me. I've dreamed about being here and hearing you guys talk about this since I was this tall, and he's been a big inspiration to me. So it means so much to have you guys out here. I just want to thank you for being here and for sharing all this wonderful content. I can't imagine how much fun you guys have. Just looks spectacular. So
How tall?
Oh, we loved Kevin. He was,
awesome to have you here.
Kevin was just an amazing human being. I mean, he was so kind and gentle and professional, and we shot so many like goof around movies too
We did.
with him.
But
Entire movies.
yes, I remember when we first got to Mexico, Kevin pulled us aside and said, "Guys, what did you tell them about me?" And we're like, "Why?" He said, "Come to my room." We walked to his room, and they had constructed this gigantic bed. Remember? This enormous bed that took up most of his room. He's like, "How tall
whole
did you
room.
guys?" Yeah, it was the whole room. He said, "How tall did you tell him I was?" And we're like,
It was 3 twin-size beds, 2 side to side and 1 at the top.
And these were not big
I
rooms.
think we found out later that it had been a English measurement converted to metric, converted to Spanish, converted back to English measurements that was the problem.
Oh yes, I see you, my nephew Wyatt Lidoff. Yes, what would you like to say, Wyatt?
I'm Stan Winston's grandson, and I'm proud that there's all these people that are saying so nice things.
Aw, this is a
Okay.
love fest.
I think it's time for a good Stan Winston story, shall we? There's several. There's several.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm not going to tell the frog story. I'll let you guys tell the frog story. I'm going to tell you guys about the first day of shooting story, because Shane is not here. But the first day we get down to Mexico.
Shane Mahan is up doing Pacific Rim with Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have been here. We love you, Shane. We miss you. And who else are we missing? Brian
And Brian Simpson,
is doing
yeah.
stunts back east.
Back east.
And Eddie Yang.
And Eddie Yang,
Eddie
yeah,
Yang.
who's Roan RoboCop. So yeah. So anyway, so we were we get down to Mexico, and of course we're all in our camouflage because we're expecting whatever. And the first day they take us all the way to set. Remember that, because it was getting dark. This is what I remember. And we get to base camp, and they're done shooting for the day, and they say, "John McTiernan wants to see you guys." So we all went down to go see John McTiernan. Is John here in the audience today? John, you here? Okay, I can talk. Okay, so we get So we get down to set. I'm gonna have to curb my language here because there's children here. But anyway, we get down to set, and literally they're wrapping out, and it is literally the jungle. It's the jungle, and John is there wearing like khaki pants, like I'm wearing, tennis shoes, and a what do you call them? A polo shirt, and he has a glass of scotch in his hand. And so he goes, Stan, I'm glad you're here. We want to talk about how the fight's going to work out here. So, and we're looking around, and it's getting dark, and all of a sudden the electricity goes off. So it's like, now we're in the jungle in the dark with following a guy around with a glass of scotch in his hand. He's going, so okay, well the predator's going to come out of the water here, and blah 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 blah. And as he's doing this, bats start flying by. And Stan's going, bats, John, bats, bats, John, bats. And John's ignoring him. And then the predator's going to come over here, and he's going to do it over here, and blah, blah, and bats, John, bats. So as we walk up, we're walking back, Shane pulls out of the ground like this big plant, and he's tapping Stan in the back of the head. And Stan's just going, God, John, bats, bats, John, bats. You guys remember that? And Shane was just walking behind him like this. The whole way back to base camp. It was beautiful.
Now, Shane Mahan was the guy, he's the one in the yellow rain slicker over there, which across the course of production, the artists like doodled on it. It was literally like their canvas. And one of the things that was on, I believe, his right shoulder was that natty young man with the fashion sense. And then there was like a little like Mad Magazine caricature of him in short pants, and he was wearing Wellington rain boots and that kind of stuff. He was wearing a mesh shirt because the nights were so warm, you didn't even need a shirt, but he was just wearing this like almost like a sports shirty kind of vest. And he was like standing knee deep in the water and was helping Kevin get into position. And I kid you not, a bat flew across the water trying to catch like a bug or something, flew up and got caught in the mesh. And he started screaming, bats, 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 just like Stan had done.
We were just laughing. It was like out of the Munsters. It's like stuck to him.
Do you guys want to talk about the frog incident? You guys should talk. Steve and Matt?
I'll tell as best as I can. I have sort of sketchy memories of it, but I remember
You were hallucinating for most of it.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
I remember hearing somewhere that Stan was just really afraid of frogs, and where we were at, in the hotel pool, there would be giant insects in the pool, like and hundreds of them, and we'd go swimming with these insects, and there were giant bullfrogs everywhere. So I don't know whose idea was it. Your idea, Shannon?
No, I think it was Brian Simpson's idea.
Somebody's idea to let's get these frogs and let's put it in Stan's room because
We carried as many as we could hold.
Some of the actors and us, we split off. We all grabbed like 5 frogs apiece, and so it's like 25 frogs.
Yeah, I think we grabbed waste paper baskets and filled them full of frogs.
Then we went into Stan's room and we put it like all in his bathroom, and then we're just kind of
his
hanging
luggage,
out.
his bed, everywhere.
And we're just hanging outside for him, and Stan comes in like, hey, fellas, and he goes in, and I swear I heard a woman scream. And Shannon was trying to keep a straight face, but he was literally in tears and trying to...
No, you missed it. Sorry, the best part of the story is Stan walked in while we were placing them in the bed, in the suitcase, in the shower, and he's like, what the hell is going on? And Kevin, I think, or you, said, we just heard that Arnold had these frogs put in your room. We're trying to get them out before you came. And he said, right? Every one of you pick up a frog. We're going to Arnold's room. And we're like, okay, we're good. We get to Arnold's room, and Sven is guarding his room. He's just there. He's like, what is going on? And they're like, Stan, this miracle of a man goes up to Sven. He's like, Arnold just had all these frogs put in my room. I'm going to put them in his room. And Sven's like, okay. And we unloaded all the frogs in Arnold's room. That's how I remember.
And I remember when Stan first was screaming like a woman, he kept calling them like, get these monsters out of my bathroom. Get them out. He's calling them monsters, and we're just like, what, these lovely little things?
And here's the thing, the next day at breakfast, Arnold comes down, and Stan's like, how'd you sleep? And Arnold's going, fine. How'd it go? What is your problem? It was years later, I ran into Arnold on Total Recall because we were shooting Child's Play 2 in the same area. And I saw him and I said, hey, what happened to the whole frog thing? And he said, he and Maria Shriver had just gotten married. And Maria found the frogs at 3 in the morning, and they knew Stan did it, and he said, I swore I would never give him the satisfaction of knowing that my wife was screaming at 3 a.m., Arnold, there's frogs all over our bathroom. He said, I never gave him the satisfaction. I just wouldn't do it. So.
And then I remember too, like Stan would try to, like he was trying to find out who actually did it. So we're having lunch and Stan's like, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna import some poisonous snakes. Yeah, poisonous snakes to whoever put the frogs in my room. And we're all just like, oh, that's nice. We never let on that we did it. He didn't find out for years.
Oh no, I don't think he ever knew that we actually did it. So. Sorry.
Awesome.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry,
no,
Karen.
it's fine. He was the goat in our family too. We would always mess with Dad. So, any other questions for these guys? Yes, please.
I'm actually wondering, how did the final design for Predator develop? Because I know that there was another suit that was built way early on, I guess, when like John Claude Van Damme was in the plane or something. How did it go from?
Yeah, Steve, you should probably talk about that because you were on that show.
Well, I'll tell you much as I know, because I know there's more people involved in this project than I'm aware of. Like, I know I share credit with a guy named Mitch Seskin as as sort of concept artist, and I have no idea who he is. So it's sort of, the scope of this, I think, was even beyond me, but I was involved in the Boss Film version years ago. I was working at Boss Films, and they were doing the original creature called Hunter, which I'm not sure who designed the original creature. It wasn't Steve Johnson, but Steve was in charge. And I was hired on as a sculptor, and a bunch of us, we kind of sculpted stuff, and then the fabrication crew put the suit together, sent it down to Mexico, and then it came back. And by the time it came back, I guess it wasn't working. I was already gone from Boss, and I was somewhere else. And then it went to Rick's, right? And then eventually went to Stan, and then we were on Monster Squad, and then Stan had asked me to work on it, to do this new design with him. And by the time we got to actually finishing the suit, before we went to Mexico, I had found in the art desk a drawing that Alan Monroe had done, which looked kind of like the Rastafarian guy, which was kind of surprising to me because we had never seen him before, and we already finished the suit. So I just assumed like that must have been something the studios gave to Stan and said this is kind of the direction we wanted to go with, and we just kind of did our take on that whole thing, on that suit. And then I had a chance to work with Alan Monroe a couple years later on Beetlejuice. So I kind of asked him about that. He says, oh yeah, I did these drawings, and whatever. He didn't go into detail as far as, how involved he was, other than he was one of the concept artists for Fox directly way back. So I think over this course of all these incarnations, there were a bunch of artists involved in getting to the final form, and we actually built and designed the final Predator. But it's kind of convoluted, and every so often I get kind of new morsels of information from somebody, like, hey, I know somebody, and they said this and this and that, and I can't confirm or deny much of anything other than something that I've actually experienced, and I know Alan had done those drawings that you saw with the Rastafarian, so.
Yeah, it's. I remember that drawing as well. That was something Joel Silver gave to Dad. Right. And what he really took from that was the Rastafarian idea. And that had some sideways, like a sideways fanged.
Yeah, I remember Stan called me in, and he had a meeting with John McTiernan, and he had called me in and was trying to tell John that the sideways mandibles had already been done, because at Boss Films, I had worked on a commercial called The Collector, in which there was an alien that had a sideways mouth that I think it's a collaboration between Scream at George and Jim Cagle, I think. And so we had done those, and then it was in my portfolio because I painted a bunch of these guys. So Stan says, can you bring your portfolio and show him? So we showed John, and John's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we don't want to repeat that. So they scrapped that. So they were in this mandible discussion at that point. And in fact, prior to that, because Stan had asked me to design the body, and the paint and everything, and he had just told me that he wanted like a futuristic soldier. And so from that is when I started designing it. And in fact, the first version I did was completely organic.
I actually have that. I have a picture of you doing that design right here. Keep talking.
Yeah, it's completely organic. It's not. There's nothing mechanical about it. It's all this organic shapes, all this stuff. And went in there and met with John about it. And John McTiernan, and John was like, oh, we kind of already did like an organic thing, so we want to try something different. So then I ended up doing the final design that you see here with the armor and the gun, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Hey, I have a question.
Go ahead, Shannon.
I can't remember. Who put Kevin's lenses in his eyes? Shane.
Nope, that was me.
It was you. No, because there's a picture of you wearing his lenses. Yeah. Oh,
Shane did all the blackout.
no, you did the blackout.
Oh, I don't know.
Stop arguing. You are all hallucinating. No one remembers anything anymore. Any
really
other
has
questions from you guys while we're trying to get to the Richard wearing the lenses shot, which is an awesome shot? Anyone? Predator set questions? The shop? Any stories you want to do? Anything you've ever wanted to ask? This is your chance.
Because if not, we're going to blab on.
Anyone? There we go. Oh no, here we've got another. Oh, that's.
Taking the mask off.
Yeah, that was actually a really fun moment for me because it was so spontaneous. In the moment of battle where the Predator is taking the mask off for the first time and he's about to reveal himself, to back up a little bit, we originally created 2 masks, one of which was a very complicated looking mechanical, sort of Darth Vader-ish kind of mask, and then the very smooth hockey mask look for the Predator. We showed both, and you'll see we actually have production stills as he's stepping out of the trailer on the day 1 reveal to all the producers, etc. And Joel Silver stepped up and said, I don't want him to wear the mechanical-looking one because it looks like that might actually be what the creature is. I want the smooth one because I want the audience to be sitting there going, what is under that mask? What is under that mask? Waiting for the moment where it comes off. So we finally get to the point of the film where they're shooting him taking off the mask, and right as he's taking the mask off, the camera is focused, the lights are set, it's 3 a.m. because we're shooting nights at that point, and John McTiernan goes, I want gas to come out of the tubes. And we're all like, no. Okay, ask me 6 weeks ago, and I'll be happy to do that for you in some future time. But instead of missing even a beat, I had a bunch of extra tubing in my set kit. I took the 3 tubes that went from the top of the helmet into the shoulder cannon, extended them very quickly just with some masking tape, and just threw them over the shoulder. And I asked the camera guy, can I have your lens dust off? And I just took the dust off, turned the can over, which causes the liquid Freon to come out very unpolitically correct and ungreen. But I just shoved it in the 3 tubes, and with no time to rehearse or number the tubes, I also guessed correctly on which one he was pulling out. So he went, and I went, and just got really lucky that it was.
What is just CG it?
And then he takes, yeah.
Oh, I forgot. There was no CG.
There was no CG.
Steve, there were still cranks on the side of the cameras when we made Predator.
Any questions out there? Yes. Oh, yes, over here again.
The bones that were picked for the bandolier of the necklace, whose decision was that? Where did you come up with the idea for each bone?
Bone Man here today?
I have no idea.
I think Stan actually, for both the medical tool, the medical kit, and for the bone selection, Stan himself went out shopping, and he went to like a taxidermy supplier and bought like every little mink, rat, small, interesting-looking skull. He just came back with this. And I actually have a couple of them still in the ones we never used. They're still in the original packages in my garage, and for both the medical tools and for those bone selections, I think Stan just said, here's a whole bunch of stuff, and these guys just basically kit bashed something that just looked cool.
Yeah, 'cause you have to understand, the schedule was so tight, it was so crazy, we hadn't slept in like weeks. Literally, if something needed to be done, we just like, okay, what's this? We need, things would just kind of appear sometimes magically because somebody would decide to just take charge of certain things, and we just had to put it together. So,
Yeah, I recall that there are, when I, years later when you talk to people and they go, oh man, I really kind of like the little details you put on the Predator, like, there's things that are tied around here and there, and I'm thinking, we did that to keep the suit closed. We literally were like panicking and like, ugh, what do we do? And Steve would go, get a piece of scrap of plastic, and we just tie it up and, okay, there he goes. And it's part of his design now is just keeping the suit together.
Tell about that mesh, the Michael's Gifts mesh.
Oh, that was you and I did that. Remember, I don't know where.
Predator's his wonderful mesh vest.
In the drawing, the design that I did on the body, there was this mesh on there, and I remember I had just finished painting the very first suit, and Stan loved it. So Stan comes in and says, he's like, wow, this looks looking really good. And I said, wait till we put the mesh on the body. He's like, what mesh? I said, the mesh on the drawing. He goes, no, we don't want to cover it. We don't want to cover up this paint job. It's just no mesh. And I was like, we got to put mesh on them. So already I had Brian Simpson go out and get the mesh.
No, you and I went to Spencer Gifts.
We did?
Yes,
Okay, well,
you and I drove right to the Northridge Mall. I'll never
Okay.
forget it. And we went in and we bought 2 of those. It was like luau nets with
that's
shells
cheap,
and
yeah.
stuff. And we're
Yeah.
like, there it is.
So then the next day when Stan came back, we already had it crazy glue, like almost completely finished. And Stan looked at it, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm getting fired today. And Stan looked at it, and he's like, yeah, it looks good. And he walks away. I'm thinking, okay. And then, because I was explaining to Stan prior to that, I said, look, this having costuming on him makes him look intelligent. Having this mesh on him, it's not practical, but it'll make him look smart. And then so after that, he's seen it. A day or 2 later, he came back with Joel Silver. He's saying, now look at the mesh. You see how smart it makes him? He's intelligent. And he's, and I'm going like,
That was the secret. That was Dad's secret always. Always. Get really brilliant people, and then you say, check out this brilliant idea. Well, that mesh is classic, and thank goodness you just ignored your boss.
Well, here's a funnier story, because years later, I was working on AVP 2 at ADI with Tom and Alagillos. And, they kind of razzed me in one of the morning meetings. They said, oh, yeah, well, the directors decided they didn't want to use the mesh on this new Predator because they thought it looked too Starlight Express. And everybody kind of had a chuckle, and I'm like, hey, whatever, I did this when I was a kid, And then a week later, they came back and go, well, I guess the mesh is going to stay in. I'm like, oh, really? Why is that? Well, according to the Predator myth, the mesh is what creates the camouflaging effect. And
That's right.
Yeah, you can't argue with fans.
And I'm laughing my ass off. I'm thinking, yeah, you see, this thing is so huge now. It's beyond anyone. It's beyond me, beyond all of us, beyond the studios.
That's
beyond,
right.
Yeah, it's its own living thing now, So it has its own mythology, and I'm laughing, going, oh, well, he's going to have to look like a Starlight Express reject.
We only have a little bit of time left, and we have a presentation to make, a special presentation to you guys. The Hunter's Lair, for those of you who don't know, is just a fabulous gathering of Predator devotees, fans, suit builders. These guys are keeping Predator alive and taking it way beyond what was created in the films. It's just amazing. I mean, if you poke around, you'll see there's just a massive following for this character, and they are making Stan and these guys proud every day with the work they're doing in their garages around the world. And we've got a few of them here today, and I'd like to call up Carl Toti from the Hunter's Lair to make a presentation to the crew on behalf of Predator fans around the world.
Well, I know we got to get out of here. We don't want to take up too much time, but these gentlemen sitting here, and of course some of the guys that couldn't be here, have provided an awful lot of inspiration for all of us, the next generation, if you will, of Predator fans. I've been building costumes along with a lot of my friends for a long time from around the country, and it's like, well, what are you going to do this Halloween? And it's like, oh, I'd like to do the Predator, but boy, that's a hard costume to make. And it's like, well, you ever hear about the Hunter's Lair? And I'm like, no. So, well, give me a look up on the internet. So find out that, half the guys on there know half the guys over here sitting to my right here. And there's the wealth of information of people who know how to make costumes and make it just the way that these guys did, although we have a lot more time to do it in. So we want to make a special presentation for these guys. We want to hand out some trophies to these guys. We thought it was appropriate after 25 years of what they've done, and this comes along once in a lifetime. So I'm going to go over here, and if I could, I'd like to call each and every one of you up, and we're going to hand you a trophy. Okay? Thank you. You get the first one.
And for the record, I just want to ask, Steve, do you have your own Predator suit at home? Predator suit, head to foot.
I do not.
And Matt, do you have your own Predator suit at home, head to foot?
No.
No. I don't. Richard, do you have a room?
I just have a room full of working Terminator robots. I don't have a Predator suit.
Dave, do you have?
That's where those went.
No. I just think it's amazing that these men and women make full Predator suits in their homes. in your home. I can't even.
Steve?
I can't even.
Here we go. The first trophy. This is the Predator cannon, guys.
One cannon.
Check it out.
Thank you. Matt?
Matt Rose.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shannon? Thanks, brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Richard? Thank you for all your work.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to answer your email. I'm giving you information on the practice.
No problem. Okay. Dave? Now, this one's not going to blow up, okay? Thank you. Thank you for... And last but not least, Matt?
Accepting on behalf of Dad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. This is
Yep.
fantastic.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I've got one for the other guys. I'll hook up with you later
Great.
on that. All right, thank you.
Just want to say something here. You know, Dad was he never liked to call himself an effects guy. He liked to call what he and his team did creating characters and creating iconic characters. He's here in spirit. This kind of lasting effect a character has had on all of you and people around the world is exactly what Dad stood for and all the artists up here stand for. It's not about effects, it's about characters. And the Predator's one that will live, I'm sure, for many, many years. And thank you all for being here. And by the way, Stan's brother Ronnie's here. My Maryland, the whole Winston family is here. My sister Debbie. So Karen, it's all his grandkids. So Stan's in the room. And thank you all.